Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Is that personal?
That's very much. You can go ahead.
Good evening and welcome to the September 11th.
You might want to gavel.
Hey, good evening and thanks for coming. Welcome to the September 11th Board of Aldermen meeting. I now call this meeting to order and would ask everyone to please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'd ask you to stay standing for just a minute because this is September 11th. And if we could have a moment of silence and remembrance of those 2,700 Americans who lost their lives that day. Thank you very much. Please be seated. I would ask the city clerk to call roll for attendance.
Alderman Allen? Alderman Even? Alderman Francisco?
Here.
Alderman Hughes?
Here.
Alderman Kinsella?
Here.
Alderman Murphy?
Here.
Alderman Schwer?
Here.
And Alderman Weezahan.
Here.
Mayor Reem is presiding, and we do have a quorum.
Before I ask to approve the minutes, I just want a couple of comments. I note that former city clerk Joan Klinghammer passed away recently. She served as city clerk for 36 years, which is quite an accomplishment. And so I just wanted to make sure we pay attention to that. And secondly, on Sunday afternoon at 3 was the Drace Park Playground ribbon cutting. It had a very nice turnout. Lots of children. They all enjoyed the going ice. And I would say that park, the way it is now structured, is really remarkable. And so it's a job well done. Then moving on, I would seek a motion and second to approve the minutes from the August 28th meeting.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion or amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearings, a public hearing to review a request from Bob Brinkman, applicant, for approval of a conditional use permit for outside dining for the development known as Blacksmith Road, located at 13360 Clayton Road in the planned development BD-2 zoning district. I now declare the public hearing open. I would ask the city clerk to enter exhibits.
Exhibit number 1 is affidavit of publication of notice of hearing, published in the St. Louis County on August 24th, 2023. Exhibit number 2 is typewritten notice of hearing, posted at the Municipal Center, on the city's website, sent via Notify Me, posted on the subject property, and mailed to property owners within 300 feet of that property with a list of the owners attached. Exhibit number 3 is bill number 2341. And the following exhibits are public comments that were sent to me and specifically requested that I enter them in tonight's hearing. These were provided in hard copy on the dais to you all and also emailed earlier today. Exhibit number 4 is email in opposition from Steve and Terry Winterman, 13370 Crossland Drive, dated September 7th, 2023, consisting of 1 page. Exhibit number 5 is email in opposition from Ann Perry, 13366 Kings Glen Drive, dated September 9th, 2023, consisting of 1 page. Exhibit number 6 is email in opposition from David and Mary Hans, 13445 Kings Glen Drive, dated September 10th, 2023, consisting of 1 page. And exhibit number 7 is email in opposition from Jenny Donovan, 13309 Kings Glen Drive, dated September 11th, 2023, consisting of 2 pages. There were a number of emails sent directly to you all. I did not enter those into the record unless people asked specifically for it. And Mayor, I'll just note before you get going on the public hearing, we do have a number of speakers and it's a 3-minute time limit. So you'll hear a bell whenever the 3 minutes is up. Thank you.
The way this will work is I'm going to invite Mr. Brinkman to the podium to answer questions from any of the aldermen. And after that questions or discussion, then we will hear from everyone who has turned, she who wishes to speak. Mr. Brinkman. And I would just open it up to the members of the board for any questions they would have. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Any softballs?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions for you. Thank you for coming out tonight. I really appreciate that. You're going to have a lot of popular comments, I'm sure. I'm kind of curious right now. I know that I've looked at the plan and all that kind of stuff. Have you done a formal sound study in the environment as of yet?
No, we have not.
Any interest in doing that?
Well, I wouldn't check, but I'm an engineer by trade, and I've done sound studies, a lot worse conditions than what could ever happen here, and it will pass. There's no violation of the municipal code at the property line from guitars and a few stringed instruments up there.
So you're aware of section.
They run about 25 minutes.
You're aware of section 210, 750 in those circuits. And says it's between 7:30 and 10 o'clock, sound level of 65 decibels. Also sound of 80 decibels. I'm actually not a sound engineer, I will admit that, but I do have a phone and you can get an app these days. I actually went over to Town Square on last Wednesday, about 7 o'clock, and just did a walk around the different sound levels at the Town Square facility. At about 50 feet, it was running about 80 to 85. You have the common, sound of people talking, a little bit of music in the background, punctuated by laughter. Now back on 100 feet, it was about 65 or so. And again, I'm not a sound engineer and all that, but it seems like there may be sound issue that's emanating from
As I understand it, the ordinance would apply at the property line.
sorry.
The ordinance would apply at the property.
I tried to go close to the property. I didn't want to go on anyone's property.
It's at the
That's
bottom
probably
of the
a
hill.
big question about, whether the property owners would be open to having sound study from their point of origin as well. Just to get quantitative data.
Mr. Brinkman, I've got a question for you. I'm just curious then, as you envision the use of the new seating arrangement you've described with 172 seats, are you envisioning then that each of the tenants then would have access to all the seats?
Yeah, when we built this, there's only one person here that was here that time. This is Al. There, it was intended to have that as sort of a community area out there, not to have a tenant that's not part of their demised area. We have the right to adjust and who can use what areas back there. The two restaurants do have specific seats allocated to them for their exclusive use. But the intent was to be able to have everybody come out and be able to sit back there and enjoy the park. You spend $7 million on the park, you spend $5 million on the building. It should be enjoyed.
I see what you mean. One of the things I'm concerned about most then is that late at night, which is typically where any neighborhood concerns might come from, you've got the potential for calling the police or what have you. And if each tenant were held accountable for the conditional use permit, I think their fear of losing their access to the additional seating would encourage them and entice them to do what's necessary to keep things quiet. How do you see that, moving that to the building management level, moving the conditional use to the building management level, allowing for an appropriate amount of control over noise and accountability?
Each tenant has something called quiet enjoyment to be able to use their space and enjoy it. If a tenant is out of control, we can control that through that portion of their lease. I assume that you understand that we were urged by the city to apply for this CUP so that you don't have everybody coming in separately. And that if one gets knocked out here, they all get knocked out. So I have a hard time hearing.
We can't hear.
We can't hear you.
Speak up.
Alderman, if you could just make sure you're moving the mic to your mouth whenever you speak. Mr. Brinkman, you can pull that out if you'd like, but we just need everyone to stop the background chatter too, because it's picking that up on our webcam.
Forgot where I was. So if one, as I understand it, if there'd be a problem and one person was knocked out, could knock out the whole thing. So, tenants they're not malicious back there. We've got a problem with something.
I just worry at late at night. It would be my difficulty if I were in the policeman's shoes, the officer who arrives on scene. I'd have a tough time thinking I could reach out to you for help. Whereas I thought if I could reach to someone there on site, at the manager level, or the owner.
There'll never be anybody on site. There won't be anybody on site. This is the only shopping center in the city that has police control. You guys watch it.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Brinkman. I know we had a good conversation this afternoon, and just to kind of reiterate some of the questions that I had. I know it got brought up at the planning and zoning meeting for how, and to Alderman Kinsella's point, how is it that the seats will be distributed or identified amongst you and the tenants? Is it something that is open as needed at a particular night? Does it fluctuate, or is it set in stone on your agreements?
Well, the tenants currently have paid for their own seating back there. There are a few that have put some other outdoor seating down from that. In a perfect world, they would all look alike, but this approval of this would allow both Cork and Cocktail Fever and the wine bar to add additional tables. And as I mentioned to you, it was sort of that way tonight, except they were closed. Last time I was here, I ate outside there. All the seats were taken outside. Nobody was inside the restaurant. I went next door to the wine place. All the seats were taken outside. Nobody was in the restaurant. Both proprietors told me people came in and left because they couldn't sit outside. This would allow, if they had a 10 top maybe that wanted to come and have dinner that night, that they could sit outside and have additional seating.
Right. And I guess the question is, if this is approved to have a universal seating code, is there any restriction on that you would have on the number of seats per business? That if the restaurant, Flavor and Cocktail, would they agree with you that they needed 50 seats outside or 60 or pick the number? And would Wild Crush decide that they needed 40 seats or whatever the number is? And does that fluctuate, throughout the year or season? And is that based on each tenant, or does that adjust, or is that?
Depending on how many total seats we have, the Wild Crush has 28 and Flavor and Cocktail has 48. Those are for their exclusive use. They could use the other seats. The other tenants could use the seats around those two areas.
So is that how you would propose it moving forward?
Yes, that's what this would do.
Well, I mean, the proposal would add more seats to the patio to allow the.
Yes, it would allow Cleaver Cocktail to use 60 seats if they could serve them out there. And the same with Wild Crush, if they needed 40 seats right at 5 o'clock and as dinner went on, they scrolled down.
So it would it would be open to, just kind of open to the needs of the night of each day.
To enjoy the city park.
And is there intent to where this would be used as an event, an event patio, to where if there was one, like a wedding that would take up 100 seats?
I would assume that would, yeah.
Okay. And then the other question that I had, I know we talked briefly, just to clarify, were you still open to the awnings being kept on and the temporary awnings being kept on, or were you in favor of?
Well, we talked about that. The intent for the board is that those awnings were really pergolas. When we first designed the place, we always had anticipated pergolas out there because at noon and that, you can't get any shade out there. So that was the intent. And then we were told that we had to go to ARB. I don't mind taking it out because I got to go to ARB anyhow. If we wanted to add those in there, but it certainly should be an allowed use out there if it's, and we have run that by the city and actually the building officials and the fire marshal in the past.
Yeah, no,
But we can delete it from here because I got to come back and see it anyhow.
is that something that can be added back on, or is that something that we need to be, is that impact the plan development and amending that based on the site plan?
You're saying if they wanted to include a pergola across the
Yeah,
entire
if there's a
back
permanent
patio?
structure, does that change the site plan?
I would think it
This
would.
awnings, and I don't know where that verbiage came from, but that would have been what I thought would be intent of that.
The awning was, the pergolas were shown on the original approval by ARB. If it changes or revises anyway, I would say, depending on the scale of it, the magnitude of what's being proposed, it's possible that the site plan amendment would be required. And at a minimum, architectural review and board approval.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question, or maybe an ask of Captain Defoe. I'm assuming you probably don't have this number off the top of your head, but could you pull together, prior to our next meeting and distribute it to the board, the number of public complaints made to the police department on this facility, over the past, let's say, year?
Well, actually, we looked into it today, and over since.
I'm sorry,
2021.
can you come up to the, thank you.
Bob, if he can get to the microphone.
That's it.
Since 2021, we've had 4 complaints of noise regarding the patio. There was 3 this year and 1 in 2022.
And are those daytime or evening time complaints? Does it state?
Most of those were in the evening, close to the 10 o'clock hour. One of them was earlier. It was 6:45 p.m.
You said the start date of that was what date?
We look back from September of 21 all the way to present. And like I said, one was in September of 22, one was in January of this year, one was in June, and one was in August.
And were they all noise complaints or were there other complaints?
They were all noise complaints.
Thank you.
But I think they didn't want to file a complaint. So that's it.
Most of them, yes.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
They did not want to file a complaint. They wanted to know, let you know there was noise there.
Okay, so it wasn't a complaint.
Well, yes, they were complaining
Report,
and they were asking our help to solve the problem.
but there was not a report filed, just a
Correct,
complaint.
they did not,
Okay,
yes.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Weasley.
Thank you. One other question to follow up. Is there, to the point of the noise, is there, with the outdoor music, as we talked about, is there any, there's no guidelines, it would be open to the discretion of the businesses of when they'd like to have, or have the music?
Well, we've agreed that it's between 7 and 10, I think, and it's over at 10. The guidelines, I think, should be the city ordinance. And Friday night, you're having a band.
The only comment I would make is that, if the residents, if I would be thinking, gosh, there's two facilities there that serve alcohol. And as the evening goes on, most of the time, the more people imbibe, they don't usually get quieter. And so I think I could understand concerns about the fact that, especially if you stand on that patio and look straight down, it almost looks like the sound just kind of rolls down that way. I think there's some very legitimate concerns. I don't know exactly what can be done in terms of sound mitigation, but as much as, I don't know, as much as you want to control the sound when you have, I'm not the loudest guy in the world, but a couple of glasses of wine, I might be a little louder. I really do worry about the amount of sound that we might be imparting to our citizens who live in those neighborhoods.
Mayor, I would only add to that, as I said, there's only one member here that was on the original council. We built that building at a higher standard than anyone would have done.
Oh, facilities, I think it's beautiful.
My wife tells me I have unlimited budgets and I exceed them. And that's what we did there. Now, I had plenty of opportunities to lease both of these spaces out. And I told a lot of people I have a moral obligation to the city to provide a nice restaurant there, because the previous board wanted exactly what you got. And that's what you got.
Thank you. Alderman Eden?
Okay, one more comment or ask. Would you be opposed to looking into some sort of sound barriers? I know they have them for inside of buildings, but something that could potentially go on the exterior of the building that would help absorb the sound?
There's nothing to do. No.
To that end, I know you mentioned you're an engineer. Are you a sound engineer or an acoustic engineer?
No, I'm a civil engineer, but I've built dozens of restaurants and they're all noisy because architects want hard surfaces done. But I'm just telling you, if I do a sound study at the property line, behind that property, there won't be any noise back there because it's below the hill. It's at the bottom of the dam.
So you'd be open to do a study?
I'd consider it. If there's not a problem, somebody else should pay for it. If there's a problem, I'll solve it. It will not. Actually, I believe the police have been out there with decibel readings. I don't know if it's hearsay, but that they were out there and it's like, the noise isn't there. It's nothing different than having a boombox or something down there in the area down there with a barbecue and that. You put a radio down there, you're gonna hear it.
I just had a quick question, Mr. Franklin. I'm just trying to understand 172 seating arrangement. So right now, where Wild and Crush is, they're right next to the nail salon. Under this plan, could Wild and Crush then take part of add-on nail salon space?
It's not their space.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask. So, but could they ask add-on, hey, we have a bigger event, can we use your outdoor patio? Is
Yeah, they
that
could use
something
their
they can?
patio.
Okay,
They could go up by the Diamond Guy too.
do they have to contact those tenants first to get permission? They don't, they can just,
That space on the patio is not part of the demised area within their lease.
so if Cocktail and Cleaver had somebody that said, we want to have, you know, an outdoor event, they could use the whole space
Yes.
and probably, I don't know, a gentleman's agreement, but they'll let everybody know this is gonna happen on this particular date. That's the only restriction.
Alderman Weekend.
I got one other question I have for Mr. Spencer. With the existing CUPs that are there and the other businesses, what's the permitted use right now on that patio?
76 seats.
And then what about the other 4 businesses? What are they permitted?
Well, they're not restaurants, so, I mean, technically, this is, again, we're talking about regulating outdoor dining. So anybody can sit out there and they can put as many seats as they want and hang out and, you know, have conversations, put a fire pit, who knows, they can do whatever they want. But as, in terms of dining, 76 seats are allowed for specifically for that.
And then other uses can be done as they see fit right now.
As they see fit, yes. And then also, I would say, if, say, another restaurant opened, they could have 12 by right, 12 seats by right. It's when you go above that you have to get the permission of the board through a conditional use permit.
So if the other businesses were essentially all restaurants as well, there's an additional 48 seats on top of what's already there in the CUP for those other, if they were restaurants as well.
There could be 48 additional legal permitted seats, yes.
Otherwise, they can be used for events of the day.
Yeah.
Activities.
Alderman Even.
Mr. Spencer? That's it.
I got close.
So are the other businesses then allowed to keep tables or chairs out there as they see fit, as long as they're not being served food or drinks?
Correct.
Okay. So if they wanted to put tables outside of any of the others that are not restaurants or bars,
Spotted Pig or
they're allowed to
Diamond Bar.
leave chairs, tables there, and anyone can be seated there as long as they are not consuming a beverage.
Right. From the
Purchase.
city's perspective, yes. I don't know what the agreements are
Okay, or from the city's
with the
perspective, that's what
property
I'm
owner, but yes, yes.
Okay, so no purchased food or drink from either of the 2 restaurant or bars. They can be
That's-
sitting there, bring their own food or drink, and that's,
Correct.
thank you.
Mr. Brinkman, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I will ask people to come up and just at random as I have the sheets. And then we'll try to hold to 3 minutes. The first one is Mr. Freienberger. And I think for the record, we need you to state your name and address.
Mark Freiberger, 2 Rutherford Lane.
Thank you. Please.
So I'm here just to speak in opposition to the conditional use permit. We live directly across from Blacksmith Grove. We moved in 2016. Actually, the town square was one of the big reasons why we decided to move there. And we, you know, the whole process, the fact that the commission has been really good about building that town square for the adjoining properties, you know, to our wishes. I've thought that everybody on that whole team has been really good about it. But this conditional use permit going from, I think what was mentioned, is 76 seats up to 172 seats. I think there's going to be no question that the noise is going to increase by a large amount, and that's amplified music. My wife and I are both extremely concerned about that because we feel that even now the noise is excessive. I mean, it's tolerable, but excessive, and we have trees that are blocking us from that. So I can only imagine what it's like for some of the other neighbors that don't have that have more of a direct line of sight. So I strongly, you know, the only thing that I would say further is that, Mr. Mayor, you were asking about how you can mitigate the sound, and I can tell you exactly how you can mitigate the sound, is vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Mr. Beard.
Hi, good evening. I'm Stuart Beard. I live at 13366 Kings Glen Drive. And I'm speaking tonight in opposition to the proposed conditional use permit. The Town and Country mission statement states the following about quality of life. We are committed to preserve the country and Town and Country while maintaining a balance between our residential and commercial communities. 172 outdoor seats, outdoor amplified music, unlimited outdoor lighting, and temporary structures that seem to have no limit on them other than in design, size, frequency, or duration. I ask each of you to think about the last wedding reception you were at. Were there 172 people there? Maybe. Think about having a wedding reception in your backyard every night. This patio is within line of sight and earshot of many of our homes. Comparison of a commercial entity to our community events that are held 5 times a year, it's not a fair comparison. I mean, we hear the community events, but we understand it's a community event. We can tolerate that. This is not the same thing. This proposal is nowhere near a balance between commercial and residential communities. The original Town Square Task Force recommendations, which this proposal appears to just completely ignore, represent an agreed to balance and specifically put limitations on the use of the space for the very concerns that many of us are here tonight to express. Noise, lights, tents. Concerns that will only be amplified if this cup is approved the way it is from the existing usage that's there today, and we're having noise problems and visual problems today, to what that will be with this cup. It's not even comparable. The businesses proposing this unintended use knew about those limitations when they decided to do business in Town Square. No one wants to keep a small business from thriving, but we are asking that all the parties adhere to the balance that was deemed appropriate and agreeable at the time this all began. I stood before you a few weeks ago and talked about my concerns of escalation. Since that time, we have heard amplified music on the patio. There are lights on the patio today. Both of those are explicitly prohibited from the existing permit. And yet, it's still happening. And now this proposal represents an enormous escalation from where we are today. The ordinance specifically calls out several things that should be considered before approving a cup. The board shouldn't approve a cup that if they believe it will adversely affect visual coherence, predominant usage, or developmental character in neighborhoods. I ask you to consider those guidelines when reviewing this cup. The impact to the neighborhoods is significant, and I strongly approve this. And I encourage you all to preserve the country and Town and Country for all of our residents. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment.
Thank you.
Apologize, I mispronounced the name, but Ms. Hollabach? Is that close?
I'm Nicole Alabak. I live at 13304 Crossland Drive. I apologize, I'm not great at public speaking. Simply put, I echo the concerns and complaints by my fellow neighbors regarding the current disruptions from the development and the potential additional disturbances if the CUP is allowed to pass. Steve and I moved from the Central West End to Town and Country because we value our peace and quiet, and I don't feel that the additional noise that's going to come from the expansion is conducive to that.
I think your public speaking was fine. Ms. Donovan?
Good evening, I'm Jenny Donovan. My husband Tom and I live at 13309 Kings Glen Drive. I'm not sure exactly why I'm here in front of you because I have copious notes here and they are all echoes of what my neighbors have told you and are going to tell you. We live farther than the 300-foot boundary to get notifications. And yet, we can hear conversations, laughter, raucous noise going on almost every night. We're raising 2 young grandchildren, and it's getting old having to explain to the boys why it's okay for adults to sit outside, drink wine and enjoy it, which is fine, but drink so much that they just get out of control and start using what the boys call bad language. We hear it in our backyard. We don't want to hear it anymore. Anybody who thinks that the sound does not travel and that it isn't inappropriate, it's just unbearable sometimes, hasn't sat in our yard or a salmon yard to hear it. We encourage you, please, do not pass this the way it is written. It's wrong, and it should not go any further than this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Pat Weezy? Mr. Pat Weezy.
Good evening, my name is Pat Weesey and I live at 13412 Kings Glen Drive in Mason Oak subdivision. And I'm here to speak in opposition to the cut. I recognize that most of you weren't here when the Town and Country Task Force worked together and put it together. Originally, they talked about a gathering space, a place for seasonal events, and some family-friendly restaurants. Now, over the course of that, it has morphed somewhat, and it was give and take between those who wanted to push this forward and our neighbors who wanted to mitigate all those things that they could. And I think we came to a relative balance, but to push this forward to where this is going with the music, the seating, the noise is too much of an intrusion and is going well beyond what was originally contemplated by the citizens of Town and Country when we agreed to the town square. And I echo the concerns of my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Salmon?
Hi, Rico Salmon, my wife and I live at 13321 Kings Glen Drive. I'm not an engineer, but I know I'm hard of hearing actually, but I can hear everything in my yard, everything. To say that just because there's a slope and that the sound stops there is nuts. Spend time in our backyard on a weekend when you're trying to enjoy yourself. Now I'm gonna go back, I was part of the original task force. Somehow, this might have been forgotten, so I'm just gonna remind some people a couple of excerpts from it. It should reflect the character, personality, culture, and history of the community, while at the same time addressing the interests and concerns of the adjoining property owners. That's why we're all here tonight. In addition, there were 3 points. The second was the development of the property must, at the minimum, not diminish the view from or quality of life for the adjoining residential properties. Come sit in my backyard on a weekend and try to enjoy yourself. I can't turn that noise off. I cannot turn it off. And then calling the police officers every time, that's not the best use for law enforcement. So that, and I think a lot of us understand it. We have begrudgingly tolerated it to now. But I can't imagine where it's going to go from here. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your service.
Thank you. Mr. Fox?
Hi, Tom Fox at 13342 Kings Glen Drive. And I'm here just to echo all the sentiments of my neighbors in opposing this measure, and to let you know that we live much more than 300 feet away. We're on the other side of Kings Glen. My backyard faces away from the development, and I can hear table conversations from my back porch. So when there's an acoustic guitar playing up there, we can hear every song. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like if this gets passed. Intolerable. And you know, the police complaints will escalate. I can't imagine that this is even being considered at this point, the amount of noise. And I encourage you to at least do a sound study, or I don't even know what that's gonna do for us though, because the number of seats right now is intolerable. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Frederick.
Bill Frederick, 13324 Kings Glen. I look at that hulking building every day of my life from my front window. We built our house there approximately 50 years ago. We're the original owner and still there. When the Worth gas station was up there, and that was a meadow and trees, and the Worth family house was there, they closed it down, and a developer was gonna put some houses in there. But then the previous mayor stepped in, and they had to have a town center, whatever a town center is. But there was never any indication in the very beginning that there was gonna be any big elaborate building put up there with commercial businesses in it. And every step of the way, it's been more commercialized, and this is just one more step to build it up into more commercial bearing. If anything, this should be a meeting to withdraw some of the activities that are going on up there, not expand them. And I think it would be a terrible mistake, and it's not what the previous administration of the city promised the owners. That was originally gonna be just a little stop off where the Worth Station was for bikers and walkers along Clayton Road. There wasn't gonna be any commercial business there. That all came after Town and Country managed to take over the property. So the interests of the citizens have never been respected since that initial takeover by the city. And I think the city should back operation down and put quieter activities up there and not allow anything else. I thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Butler.
Hi, excuse me, Lindsay Butler. I live at 13310 Kings Glen Drive in the Snow subdivision. Thank you for letting me come and speak. I know your job, believe me, I know your job is not always fun like this evening, but thank you for your service and for your time listening to us. So I came obviously to oppose this CUP as well, and to give just a little bit of background since this board was not here during the negotiations with Mr. Brinkman. He did say a couple of interesting things, and I apologize that I do not have my documents because they were submitted to the FBI during an investigation for this project and to the state auditor for this project. So in those documents and recordings, you would have heard that Mr. Brinkman in the initial negotiations stated that he was going to allow this patio to be open to the public, of which he changed his mind once he started receiving retail or tenants coming in. So he has changed his mind multiple times with promises that he made to the board and to the residents. Additionally, he did state that he had tenants, and when we were negotiating what could be used in this space, the board of aldermen sat with him. And one of the things that he had said he wanted that we removed was dog grooming, dog boarding. And the board of aldermen at the time made him remove that because the noise intrusion from something like that in that space would be too great on the neighboring subdivisions, there are actually 3, the condos, Rutherford, and Mason Oaks. Additionally, something that had been promoted and proposed by Mr. Brinkman that was removed by the previous board due to the intrusion onto the neighbors were signage and lights that would have been on the back side or the south side, I believe, of the retail building. You can still see that. I did look up that document. It is still on our city website. There were 3 proposed signs to be in the back and lighted, and the board of aldermen made him remove those as well because it would have been too intrusive on our neighborhood. Looking at that background, the previous board, and of which you now are the new board, and you're going to be making this very, very important decision, did everything that they could to remediate some of the decisions that were being promoted by Mr. Brinkman to make his space as big and as grand as possible. The promises that were made by the previous board, of which I know you were not, but I want you to make your own minds up as well. They really were trying to do what was best for the subdivisions, do what was best for the people that elected us into office. We do want your business to succeed. However, we don't want their success to come at the expense of the people that are here, that we go and visit these places. I did find it kind of interesting, and I was unaware, but someone mentioned that they had gone into these two businesses and that they were completely empty on the inside. So I think, I apologize, my request and maybe a suggestion would be, the noise is terrible. I don't back up to it. I can hear every conversation that happens on the patio, and it is raucous and very loud. And if they're trying to promote music multiple times throughout the week, that is way too much. Maybe move your music inside, since it sounds like it's an empty space. Bringing additional seating outside when you only have 2 restaurants seems a little putting the cart before the horse, because why would you be approving something that doesn't even exist? He can't even have an additional restaurant because he wouldn't have the parking availability. So let's not act like he has something there that he cannot have there. So vote this down, please. And they can come up with really creative ideas on how to work with the neighbors and still have a thriving business. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any other speakers. Do you want to speak, sir? Please.
So,
we would need your name.
yeah, Paul Tyson, 13347 Kings Glen Drive. My wife and I bought the house 6 months ago. We have 2 kids under 3. We bought it, we were closing on it in February and March, so we weren't able to diligence the noise. So we have been very surprised by how loud it is. So short of a sound solution, I don't really see this working. We back up directly south of it. The kids are in bed at 8. It's not when we move to town and country. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your service.
Thank you. I would now declare the public hearing closed. Thank you for everybody who came out and spent their time giving the comments. Thank you very much. Next is a public hearing to allow citizens to be heard on the annual property tax rates proposed to be set by the city of Town and Country, a political subdivision. I now declare the public hearing open and would ask the city clerk to enter exhibit.
Exhibit number 1 is affidavit of publication of notice of hearing published in the St. Louis County on August 25th, 2023. Exhibit number 2 is typewritten notice of hearing posted at the Municipal Center, on the city's website, sent via Notify Me, and posted at both the Firehouse and Longview Farmhouse. And exhibit number 3 is bill number 2342.
I would invite our finance director, Joanna Jadali, to the podium to answer any questions from members of the board. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this? I declare the public hearing closed. Great job, Commissioner. Heading to appointments for Parks and Trails Commission, I wish to appoint Robert O'Glennis to an at-large position. I seek a motion and second to approve. Thank you. Any discussion or amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Next, for Ways and Means Commission, I wish to appoint Ben Holman to a Ward 1 position. I seek a motion and second to approve.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion or amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. I now recognize the board's opportunity to select a liaison to the P and Z Commission. Alderman, please, Ann.
I'd like to nominate Alderman Kinsella to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
You do, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sorry. now invite Bob to the podium to swear in the newest member of the Town and Country Police Department. Zach Doyle.
Mayor, before I actually do the swearing in, I'd like to call on Captain Defoe just to give a brief introduction.
Please, please.
Of our new officer.
This is Zach Dorton and his girlfriend. Sorry. So Zach grew up actually in Town and Country, went to Westminster High School. From there, he went on to college at Missouri Valley and graduated with a bachelor's degree. From there, he went to the Police Academy, graduated in 2015, and has worked for Ellisville Police Department for 6 years. And the last 2 years, he's been at O'Fallon Police Department. We're really excited to have him here with us.
You stand up here. Raise your right hand and repeat after me, please. I state your name.
I, Zachary Dorton,
Do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I possess all of the qualifications
that I possess all of the qualifications
prescribed by law for a police officer,
prescribed by law for a police officer,
that I will support and uphold the Constitution
that I will support and uphold the Constitution
and the laws of the United States,
and the laws of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Missouri,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Missouri,
and the ordinances of the city of Town and Country, Missouri.
and the ordinances of the city of Town and Country, Missouri.
I further state that I will abide by the code of ethics
I further state that I will abide by the code of ethics
adopted by the city of Town and Country Police Department.
adopted by the city of Town and Country Police Department.
Congratulations and welcome.
Let's get him to sign that.
Officer Dorton,
Yes, sir.
you're joining a really fine group of officers and policemen and detectives in this city. And I will tell you, I do not believe there's a municipality in the county that has more respect for their police officers than this city right here. So I think we're thrilled to have you, and I think you should be thrilled to join this police force with these officers.
Mr. Mayor, I'm very excited. Having been a resident for the majority of my life, I completely agree with everything you just said there. So,
Welcome on board.
thank you very much.
Your shift starts in.
Start you up.
At this point in time, I would recognize the board's opportunity to provide any reports if they wish. Alderman Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to report that the Ways and Means Commission will be relatively bright and early in the morning, 8:30, here in the community room. And then noon on Wednesday, the 13th, the task force on the military and first responders tribute will meet. Last week, there was a meeting with individuals from SWT and music. We came up with timelines. Hopefully, by September the 11th of 2024, we will know how much our residents are supportive of our military and first responders, and hopefully that project will be complete by Veterans Day.
Great.
Thank you.
Alderman Weezahan.
I just wanted to report that next Tuesday, the 19th at 4:30 p.m., police fire and master community.
Alderman Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, as the mayor said, we had a great turnout for the race ribbon cutting ceremony yesterday. And so it's great to see all the kids. They helped cut the ribbon, and it was a joyous occasion for all. Next, the city's accepting construction bids for Longview Playground until September 21st at 10 a.m. And the last concert in the concert series is this Friday, September 15th from 6 to 9. Merrimack Valley Ramblers will be there, and so will plenty of food trucks. And finally, market calendars for the biggest event of the year that we have, which is Fall Fire and Ice. That will be October 7th from 5 to 8 p.m. It'll be held at Longview Farm Park, live music from voodoo players, food and drink vendors, kids corner with inflatables, fireworks at 8.
Thank you. And last Friday, that was actually a very nice band. They did a great job. Unfinished business, bill number 23-40, sponsored by Aldermen Allen, Franciscan and Hughes, without objection, to the city clerk to read the bill for the second time.
Bill number 2340 is an ordinance amending Title 4, Chapter 405, the zoning regulations of the Town and Country Municipal Code, specifically by the amendment of Section 405.335.c regarding grand tree regulations.
Thank you. I seek a motion, second to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Alderman Schwer.
Yeah, I have some questions for Spencer.
Sure.
I'm not familiar with a lot of this stuff, but who enforces this ordinance?
A city planner.
And then obviously someone goes out and measures these trees.
So in this case, just like with infill housing, tree studies required, certified arborists would be hired by the applicant, and they would develop a report.
Okay, so that each plot, then that's like an individual registry, right? They know that they have to do this tree study, and then it's documented how many grand trees are on it.
Right, a professional arborist who's certified performs that work.
And then the arborist, if a tree is sick, they can determine, if it has, it's like an emerald ash borer, then if that tree's a grand tree and it has to be, they don't pay for a fine.
Poor trees in poor condition don't count against a property owner. Yeah, they're responsible for it, but we don't penalize them for taking out a poor tree.
And that's in the tree report, so
Right.
if a tree is sick or dying.
I look at different sites as best I can, and if I make a determination that we need further review, the city has the opportunity to hire a third party to investigate, and we bill the property owner as well. They have escrow. We can take monies from that to use if there is not, if there's uncertainty about the report. I will say that it's a limited number of companies in the St. Louis County area that do this kind of work, and they're all reputable, and we see them all the time with demolition work. So it's very rare that there's serious questions, but we have that opportunity to investigate information.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Alderman Lucian.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a conversation earlier with Mr. Spencer. The question I had was, can you kind of explain how the $100,000 limit came to be?
So originally, we had the ordinance amendment proposal, then we had a subcommittee of former Alderman Barote and Commissioner White. And when, at that point, after we determined that requiring more replacement trees was infeasible due to the physical limitations of properties, then the financial penalty aspect came into play. And then once staff started running the numbers, and the numbers started going up into the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially. A lot of it's dependent upon the size of the tree. The larger the tree, the higher the cost. The staff's concern was that that would be overly onerous, and after speaking with legal, recommended we put a cap on that of $100,000 so that we're not creating being financially onerous or creating a takings where we're making a project financially feasible.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but I had the feeling that P&Z, that the sense was, to what you said, that 400,000 seemed a little steep, and it was basically a compromise to say, hey, 100,000, if you're gonna take Principia and develop that, which would cost, because most of this will be for larger developments, or not just a single house, that that out of the scope of the entire brush of the project. We did not seem onerous, and that's, P&Z, I think basically said 100,000 seemed reasonable relative to where it would be applied.
The typical scope of projects, correct.
To follow up to that is, my concern is that the 100,000 limit seems, more onerous to a small development as opposed to a large development where $100,000 can be very impactful to, 5 or 10 acre lot compared to a 50 acre parcel, for example. If they're maxed out at the same, and they would hit that would be, a higher cost per acre. Is that a concern, or is that something that was discussed of like a tiered system, if you will, for larger parcels? Can that be addressed?
That conversation, there was no in-depth conversation as to tiers that I can recall. I certainly, depending on the scale of the project, the $100,000 will be more significant, depending on what you're expecting to develop out of it. 3-lot subdivision like Greystone, I think the estimate for the fee was $60,000. You're selling lot, the lots being developed, the houses being sold are $2+ million. Lots are $500,000 to $600,000. Now it's all relative, but obviously, smaller projects, the magnitude's gonna increase.
Yeah, so, and that's, is there a way to, cut it down to where it would be a smaller amount for smaller developments?
There's different ways you could slice it, sure. I don't know off the top of my head what that looks like. I would have to investigate that. I wouldn't want to do it from the days, creating a tiered system on the fly. But the P&Z's goal is to have a financial disincentive for taking down grand trees. And then we capped it at 100,000 because we didn't want to, again, be overly onerous. We see maybe one subdivision every year or two. And commercial projects, it's very rare because there's just not grand trees in commercial sites. This is not something that's going to be happening on a monthly basis. It might happen once or twice a year, possibly. It's not going to be a common occurrence, but certainly we could look at some form of tier so that the magnitude is shared, that it's fair.
But in essence, the way I think I went through P&Z, I think it was felt it was sort of tiered in the sense that, it's gonna be a few acres and there'd be a few, not everybody's getting 100,000. Somebody might, 30,000, 60,000, 70.
Yeah, like I mentioned, Greystone was 60,000. They had some smaller grand trees. Stone Chase, which came previously, I think they removed, a significant number of trees. Obviously, that's a larger subdivision, but that would have been hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars if we didn't cap it. It depends on the size of the tree, to be honest. Because a 20-inch grand tree is $4,700. A 40-inch grand tree is $18,000. There's a significant difference depending on the size of the tree.
Alderman Murphy.
Mr. Spencer, thank you for doing all that homework and the paperwork and memos and how to do all the calculations. I'm trying to get to the intent of the change in the ordinance at this point. So the current ordinance has been in place since 2019, is that right?
Correct.
And let's just pick 2022 as a year. How many claims or cases were there in 2022 roughly?
Cases of?
Or, just situations where you had to enforce the ordinance.
Well, for grand trees, as it comes to subdivisions, I don't believe there was anything in 2022.
Year before? How often is this happening?
Greystone was the last one. That was a couple years ago. We deal with infill development, and that's about the tree volume. Every infill house has to maintain 50% of the existing tree volume. It's different than grand trees. And there's a replacement requirement there and a fee in lieu of. But in terms of grand trees and how we regulate that, Greystone was the last subdivision or entity that we had an issue with.
So for 4 years, it's been basically going over to the order saying either replant trees or pay tax.
Correct.
Based on the calculations.
Yes.
Have we had any non-compliance situations?
As of this date, no.
And in your view, has the current ordinance been ineffective?
Has the current ordinance been ineffective? In terms of commercial and subdivisions?
Just in general?
I wouldn't say it's ineffective. It is what it is. I mean, we simplified the ordinance 5 years ago and implemented the fee structure, which we didn't have before, fee in lieu of. We had mature woodlands and all this terminology, we cleaned it up, and we didn't even have grand trees. That was a new addition. So it's a short period of time, really, in the grand scheme of things, to judge whether it's been truly ineffective. What I'll finish with is, and I've said it before, we have suburban state zoning at 70% of our community. 150 feet of width, 1 acre minimum size, 50 feet of right of way, 26 feet of pavement. We have these very specific standards, and anyone who wants to do development, you're gonna run into issues with trees. They're just gonna have to come down because of the way the grading works and laying out the subdivisions to meet our standards. I think that P&Z and staff feel that a financial disincentive would be helpful to think about different ways to do the design, but also to let's put that money back into the community in terms of tree planting, tree maintenance, tree care. If those trees are removed, then there could be some good that comes out of it.
I guess my last question really is, we all value trees, they're great for erosion control, canopy control. Everyone loves the tree. I guess my question is, if you could provide any insights from the group in terms of how you came up with the calculation of the new ordinance, the proposed ordinance, being cut and pay a higher rate.
It was simply based on the initial thought from former Alderman Whitmire was he wanted to see a higher replacement cost for taking out trees. The determination of staff and the subcommittee was you remove one tree and then you require 10 or 12, 15, 20 trees, whatever that is. There's physically not enough land to put these trees on. So instead of that, let's keep the standard where it's at and have a financial fee, and that money then can be used, goes into a tree bank, which we have, it's a fund, and then that money can be spread around the community in parks right away, wherever, city property, to be used.
Alderman Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I appreciate the passion and the work that's gone into this. I know it's very important to many. Does another municipality around do this?
Well, there's certainly, there are grand tree regulations in other communities, like, I want to say Clayton has one, Wildwood, I'm sure there's others that I'm.
Comparable to what we're talking
Comparable, yes. Fee-wise, different, a lot of cities around the country do a fee per tree. Not necessarily a fee based on the size of the tree removed, based on the cross-sectional area, which is the volume. I think we're fairly unique doing that. But tree regulations are widespread across the United States. Every state, city's different. The definition of a grand tree, we say is 20 inches in caliber. Some cities say 24, some say 26. There's different measurements.
Okay, and so would someone be checking as trees grow to make sure we have a tree that's moved into the grand tree
No.
No?
You mean would staff be going to different sites and evaluating trees over time? No. We have, we have letters of credit to establish protection of our woodlands and our grand trees as part of construction. And those expire after a period of 3 years. And that's when staff would do the inspection. But, 10, 20 years down the line, there's too many sites around town. We're not staffed sufficiently for that kind of.
So we can't say that the current 2019 ordinance is ineffective, right?
I mean, everyone's got their own opinion on if it's ineffective or not.
Subjective.
Yeah, it's very subjective.
At some point, and I don't know if it was in discussion, I've looked for it again, there was the word where possible, as far as where someone was to locate a tree.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
Don't off the top of my head.
And that was something that sounded pretty subjective to me if you were wanting to develop.
It might be, Ryan, when it said the tree has to remain where possible, if it can only be removed if it has to be removed as part of the development.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as far as location, then have the rest of the building or
Like if the tree is in the middle of the lot, right where the house is going,
Yeah.
that tree's got to go.
And
But if it's on the periphery, where possible, leave it.
And that's what I was getting to earlier. When you develop a subdivision, there's so much grading, and that destroys every tree. And then to prepare the pad sites, there's the stormwater detention areas that have to be built, and that destroys any existing trees. That's a big surprise. All the major trees that survive are around the periphery because they're out of the way of all of this work. So I think that the recognition from P&Z was that's what's happening. So there needs to be some there's some fee to capture the value of those trees that's lost, so then they can then be, again, benefit the entire community.
and then taking this money, this fee, this fine, whatever we call it, this $100,000, it goes into a tree fund,
Correct.
and then we buy more trees in town and country?
Well, the tree fund is in the general, it's an account in the general fund. And the city could use that money to plant trees. It could use that money to treat for emerald ash borer. It could use it for maintenance, and our maintenance foreman is always having to expend money to deal with branches and all sorts of issues along our right of ways. That money could be used for that as well.
So it could be used to fill some of our existing costs.
Maintain the health of our city canopy or forest, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, it could be used actually to pick up branch clippings that we can use to on occasion.
I don't know about that. That might be a little bit of a stretch. I think it's to maintain or expand our trees.
Maybe people would put up parks and maintaining parks, it could go into a park fund and to maintain.
I would think so, if that wouldn't have to come out of the park stormwater fund, since this is designated for the general fund, could,
The money in the general fund can go to other. funds.
okay, so it could go to the parks. Yep.
Can I continue, Mayor?
Surely.
I want to ask Mr. Shelton, because when we had our performance audits and we had individuals look at the lean staff that we have in town country, do we have people sitting around with extra time to do some of this extra program?
In general, we do not have extra people sitting around with a lot of time. We do have a lean staff, and we keep our staff busy.
So there could be extra work for this.
If the enforcement of this would fall to Mr. Spencer, correct?
But
Our city.
I would argue that if this occurs once every couple of years, and maybe on a 3 or 4 acre or 5 acre, whether you're for or against it, I don't think it would overly tax our city employees.
Yeah, just speaking for myself, the tree fund can't be used on salary adjustments either. The staff already has to manage infill development and all the arborist reports and all that goes with that. So this is like a drop in the bucket compared to the monthly demolitions coming in, architecture review board submissions. Those are all part of that process, so.
Thought it would be included in the existing activities.
Yeah, this wouldn't be a newly burdensome.
It does seem like a little bit over-regulation from some points of view, certainly in my point of view. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Francisco.
I know this is probably a hard number to quantify, but how many grand trees do you think we're talking about here? And
Like in the entire city of
yes, I mean, do we have any kind of a number that we're looking at? And I know what you
thousands and thousands and thousands.
So we're talking about thousands and thousands of grand trees.
Yeah.
And every 3 years, roughly, you have some sort of an arborist report that goes on to see.
No.
That's what I thought you were.
Oh, no, I didn't, if I gave that, we don't have a citywide tree.
Okay, so how do you, I guess that my issue is how we,
It's like, I'm sorry.
no, I'm glad that you're telling me this isn't super burdensome for you, but I'm trying to figure out, do we have a registry then that goes into play where or when a site developer comes out, you will then go assess the trees, figure out which ones are,
No, so Mr. Developer wants to build a subdivision. As part of his submission, plating documents, all that kind of documentation, he files an arborist report. So he hires a company to go out and inventory every single.
which he does today regardless.
Yes, correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah, we're not requiring
Right,
any
that's
new
what I'm
work
trying to
on the developer to do that kind of report, correct. And they file that report, I review it, I look at the site. If there's something that catches my attention, I may interact with their arborist, and if worse comes to worse, we have the ability to hire a third party billing the developer to verify those findings. Usually it's about the condition of the tree, where, is it a poor tree, is it a healthy tree? Because obviously that matters, because you're not penalized for poor
And if
trees.
it's that unhealthy tree, we can come down with no penalty.
Correct.
It's only the healthy trees we're talking about. This
Correct.
isn't creating additional work for you necessarily, because an arborist report has to be done regardless.
Right.
It's just simply stating to the developer, you've got 2 grand trees on your lot, to the extent that you can preserve them, please do.
If you can't,
Or
here's the
if
fee.
you can't, here's the fee that you.
Correct.
And you're saying this occurs, again, very infrequently.
Correct, because we don't have the land for lots of new subdivisions. It's a infrequent occurrence.
And there's already a fund established, so the money would go to a fund that's already existing. I'm just trying to make sure this isn't, and it doesn't sound like it is, burdensome, creating additional layers of bureaucracy.
I'm not concerned about it from the staff point of view in terms of the work involved.
Thanks.
Alderman Kinsella.
Mr. Spencer, just one more quick question on that. In your own words, you said that most developments require that you clear the land and grade essentially to prepare the site.
Right.
I don't know whether you could put a swag on this or not, but can you imagine what percentage of time would we be saving a grand tree versus just applying that going forward?
It's really case dependent. It would be rare, I would think, just because of the amount of grading and the amount of activity that goes into a commercial land or subdivision type of development. Again, that's why all the trees that survive are on the periphery. You have to protect the root zone throughout the entire development process, and I've seen it too many times. They'll preserve the tree, but it dies 2-3 years later because of just the disturbance that impacts it.
Then I'm not hearing tree preservation going on. penalties. Yeah, okay, very good, thank you.
Alderman Even.
And to be clear, this is not for any existing homeowner that wants to take down their trees in their yard. This is just for a development of some sort.
It does not apply to existing residences, it does not apply to infill development where you take down an existing house and build a new house. Grand trees, the regulation currently, and then with this additional language applies only to commercial development and new subdivisions.
And so it does not apply to someone who purchases a lot, demolishes the property, and then wants to build something in addition? Did they have the same penalty for removing grand trees on their property if they buy one single lot?
You're talking about a residence or commercial?
Residence, yeah.
No,
tear down.
there's no penalty for a grand tree. What I'll say though is they have to maintain 50% of the
Right.
overall tree volume. Well, grand trees are the most significant. They're what really contribute to that tree volume. So there is an incentive for them to maintain that grand tree to help meet that standard.
And regardless of whether or not let's say that development, they cannot save a grand tree based on where they're building it. If they take the tree down, regardless of whether or not they replant something, they still are under this particular proposal.
They have to
would
replant
still
and
pay a fee.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
I would ask the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Alderman Hughes. Alderman Allen. Alderman Francisco. Alderman Weezahan. Alderman Even.
Nay.
Alderman Murphy.
Nay.
Alderman Kinsella. And Alderman Schwer.
Nay.
It fails 1-7.
New business. Bill number 23-41, seeking sponsorship for the bill. Perhaps Alderman Even. Without objection, the city clerk read the bill for the first time.
Bill number 2341 is an ordinance approving a conditional use and authorizing a conditional use permit for outside dining for the development known as Blacksmith Grove, located at 13360 Clayton Road in the city of Town and Country.
23-41 is continued to the meeting of Monday, September 25th, 2023, for the second reading and consideration. Next bill number 23-42, perhaps sponsored by the board as a whole. Without objection, to the city clerk read the bill for the first time.
Bill number 2342 is an ordinance establishing the annual rate of tax levy for the year 2023 on property located within the boundaries of the city of Town and Country, St. Louis County, Missouri, providing for the extension of said taxes on the books of the county collector by the county clerk, and providing for the collection as provided by law.
Thank you. Bill number 23-42 is continued to the meeting of Monday, September 25th, 2023, for the second reading and consideration. The warrant list is in the amount of $1,283,212.71. Seek a motion and second to approve. Second. Any discussion or amendment? A detailed explanation of it was helpful. All in favor, say aye. Aye. There's a passion unanimously. I do not have any other business. Anyone else have anything to bring up? If not, I seek a motion to adjourn, seek a motion to approve, and a second for that. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thanks for the great question.